So much, Laney. Well, it is right now time to get those legal questions answered. It is our Law Call segment. Go ahead if you haven't already and get your call in queue. The number 256-536-0077. Our friend Michael Timberlake from Timberlake League and Brooks joining us right now. And we're going to have a topic to talk about in just a moment. I do believe, though, we already have a caller on the line. Would you like to go ahead and take that?
Sure.
Diana, are you there?
I'm here.
Go ahead with your question.
Okay, we moved in and put a fence up in our backyard, and the neighbors behind us wanted us to line it up with their fence, which put us over the property line. Well, we had a tree branch that fell and knocked over one of their fences, and they're wanting us to pay for it, and we're like, technically, the property line is between the two trees, so who would be liable for that?
Ooh, that's a good question. So first of all, what I tell people with fences is, you want to make sure that if you're building a fence, even if it's attached to a neighbor's yard, that it's going to be on your property. You don't want to build off of that on somebody else's property without some kind of formal license or easement agreement with the neighbor. If you are dealing with a situation with trees, the law in Alabama basically states this, is that you have the right to cut a tree limb going straight up to heaven from your property. So you can go up there and cut the tree limb even if it is a healthy tree. But if there is a tree that is on your neighbor's property and it is healthy and the limb falls off or the tree falls on your fence, then it is going to be your responsibility to repair the fence, even though the tree came from your neighbor's property. The neighbors, if it's an act of nature at that point, basically, unless you can show that the tree was diseased or dying or in some kind of disrepaired state, then your neighbor's not going to be responsible for damage caused by falling limbs or the falling of the tree. You're going to be responsible for your damage, and they would be responsible to repair the damage on their side.
All right, Michael, thank you for that.
Yeah.
And while we wait for more callers, we keep hearing the Supreme Court is taking up the issue of potentially banning guns for drug users, and of course, what do you make of that?
Well, so the last case involving gun use or the Second Amendment and restrictions on that dealt with people that had protective orders or history of domestic violence. And the Supreme Court said, look, reasonable restrictions on people for gun ownership that are found to have, be domestic, abuse in their background or be subject to a restraining order, that is something reasonable and is something constitutional under the Second Amendment. So the question is, how far do they stretch that out? The the case that they've agreed to look at today concerns someone who was, he was caught with significant amount of marijuana,
right,
significant amount of cocaine, and a firearm. And they've said that because of his, connection to his use of those drugs, that somebody he's found to have a history of use of drugs is unable to own a firearm. And so that's what the court's going to look at is that restriction on his right to own a gun reasonable under the circumstances? Now,
there are already, of course, restrictions on felons owning firearms. So I assume maybe he has not been convicted of a felony if we're at a Supreme Court level with a case that specifically is because of his marijuana use, but not because he's a felon.
Right. Basically what they're looking at is the historic use of drugs, right, and the ownership of a gun. And the federal statute prohibits people with a historic use of drug use, from owning a firearm. Now, the position of the plaintiff in the case is that, well, look, it's my history is with use of cannabis, and cannabis is legal in many, many, many states. So why should I have my rights restricted as a result of using a drug that is legal?
And so when we get to a situation like this particular makeup of the Supreme Court, many of these are Donald Trump appointees. Many of Donald Trump's supporters are gun friendly and gun favorable. So do you have a guess on which way the Supreme Court might lean on this one?
Well, it's one of those things. When you're looking at the people that watch the court, you would think that they would have a lien. But they were the first, they supported the restrictions on gun ownership for people that have, you know, domestic violence problems or domestic abusers. So I think this is going to be in the similar vein in the sense that, look, you know, they may believe in an unfettered right to own a firearm up to a point.
Right.
And the question is, you know, where do you draw the line? And is it, I think more than likely this court's going to draw the line on, you know, drugs and, you know, and domestic abuse.
And I must admit, this court has surprised me a few times.
It's a very, very unpredictable court.
Right. And of course, if you, well, talk about your blog before we go.
Oh, sure. So, you know, if we talked about the tree limbs, one of the most popular blog posts that we have on our site deals with tree laws and neighbors and concerning who has the right to do what. And if you have want more information for that, you can go to our blog at www.law-injury.com. And there's also a plethora of other topics.
And Michael, we always like it when you stop by. We enjoy having you here for Law Call on Mondays. And if you didn't get your questions answered, call next week. We'll get you through. And of course, you can also call our friends over at Timberlake and League and talk to them directly if you'd like. We'll be right back.